On for my city, I put on for my city, I put on for my oh oh oh. What's good, world? Check it out, coming at you live midday. It's Thursday, um, and today. I'll find it on the way back. Okay, sorry about that. Today was my last day at the dental office, working as a full-time employee. I was pretty much there 4 days a week, 3 to 4 days. Um, it was a great practice, but there's something, because you can make something out of everything, right? Like, that's just the power of storytelling. You can connect dots that may not have actually be there or may not be there, but guess what? If you tell yourself enough, the imagined order will become the real. So what I'm telling myself is, when we come back to the concept of culture, there's the notion and the idea of pioneering, the adventurer, the wanderer, the journey. That is a very symbolic thing in our lives. One of my best friends is reading The Origins of Creativity by Edward O. Wilson. And that was a great book. I lent it to him, and we were kicking it yesterday, and I read through some of the places that I highlighted. And the section that he was on now is on the archetypes and how these staples of mythology are so important to, like, everything about our lives. And they broke down, like, the 7 concepts that are like elements that are used in all stories. And one of the stories, or one of the elements, is the quest. This idea of going elsewhere, on a journey, on a trip, an exploration. Sometimes the quest is to go find a thing. Sometimes the quest is to be found or reach a destination, to deliver something, to go pick up a thing. No matter what, there is this idea that is universally human about traversing a measured or grand distance, and facing the unknowns that will appear on said journey. And I think one of the most classic cases that's probably understood is the Odyssey. It's a tale about Odysseus returning back to civilization after the war and documenting all the perilous adventures and misadventures that he had along the way. So that's journeying. It's so, again, necessary to us. And paraphrasing from the book, it talked about how prehistory humans were hunter-gatherers and just nomadic in general. There was always a spirit of wander within us, like it's genetically almost programmed to have a desire to wander, or it once was, but that was before, agricultural revolution and everything else. So that kind of changed the game. And it really did change the game, like, big time, because we started going from nomadic bands to settled, because we had to protect and watch crops and things of that nature. So we did start to see some of the wandering genes die out, but I believe that there's definitely a lot of humans who still have, like, an innate desire to wander, to journey. And even if they don't themselves want to journey, there's probably still a fascination with the concept of a quest or a journey. I mean, every so many, I won't say every book, but so many books, so many stories, so many things, so many games are all about quest. I mean, we look at Elden Ring. My goodness. One of the best games that has been released, the pinnacle of questing right now, I think, in a video game. And it's beloved by all because you get to go on this journey and you face perilous things and you don't really have a sense of direction or a map. You might have internet guides, but in the game world, you barely get clues as to where you're supposed to go, but you still do go. So, how does that relate to my last day at work? I think when we think about the concept of the journey, what is essential to the journey? Well, obvious one is a destination. You need a place to go. You need somewhere that is your marker of I reached the point. And simultaneously, you need an origin point. You need a place where you can begin said journey from. You need to have that. Even if you are on the journey and that's where the story begins, quote unquote, there was a place that this maybe particular leg of the journey began. So you may, your point of origin may not necessarily have to be like where you were born, but it can be where you're leaving off from to begin the intentional traversal of space or time. And that for me was the dental office today. I think being able to leave and have the choice to leave is powerful. To be able to say that I see what life in the direction that I'm supposed to go next, and I'm going to go ahead and answer that call. But in order to answer that call, I do have to leave the comfort of the village, the comfort of the home. You have to discard what has made you complacent to some degree. And complacency isn't always bad at times. Like, I think it can be actually a really beautiful thing to have some level of complacency, especially if you are desiring a period of stability. Be complacent. That's good. But if you're trying to shift gears like myself and, move more into agency and action and intention, then complacency is going to be an obstacle to that. And comfort, and it's easy to get wrapped up in comfort and complacency because it feels good. It's easy to know that like your next things are covered and you don't really have to think about it. It's just kind of like, oh, it'll happen. It can lead to a passive way of living if left unattended. And is that any different than like what is that call to journey when we look at I believe it is Joseph Conrad. It's either Conrad or Campbell. Don't quote me on it. But one of the Joseph C's talks about the hero's journey. And yeah. Like, that's just one of many approaches to story development. But it seems to be a universal one. And the thing that happens is sometimes your departure from home is like easy. Sometimes the story, the person gets a send-off. The village says farewell. They have a ritual, a celebration honoring before embarking on the quest. It feels like a privilege and an honor and a celebration to be the one chosen to wander. Spoiler alert, just briefly for the newest 28 years later. So skip to maybe like 45 seconds ahead. Okay, so when the story starts, it's about the son going on a quest to make his first kill, and just amazing how the initiation ritual of the town, like, all on board with him. He gets to eat bacon for the day. It's a celebration. His dad is excited. He's excited. Everybody's giving him daps, and then he walks out into the real world, and it's nothing like what he expected. So it is interesting that sometimes hero journeys can begin with, a welcomed exit. And then there's other times where you're kind of forced out. You have no choice but to escape and go. Because if not, then, it's bad news. And that tends to be more of the signs in some of the better fantasy stories. Thinking about like Star Wars, especially the OG one where, Luke got wrapped up with those 2 droids and he had to leave home, but nobody sent him off happily. Like, he dusted off with Obi-Wan after his caregivers were killed, his family. So, like, that's a case. Frodo having to skip out of the Shire in order to, like, go on this quest. They didn't celebrate him and give him a round of applause like Bilbo got. It was more of like sneaking in the dark and taking back roads and concealing himself. So, concept of leaving home. It's very interesting how one leaves. And I guess a question could be, is the way that one leaves indicative of the journey that they will go on? Or are they unrelated? I would say it could be unrelated, but there could be some thematic undertones as you check out the whole journey from beginning to end. So I'm thinking about the journey that I'm about to take, that in parallel to this too as well. This is definitely like more of a personal episode because, again, I'm literally navigating the feelings of leaving the office. 2020, I planned on leaving my former office to, honestly, I think I was going to go work in Chicago. I wanted to go move to Chicago and, build up stuff over there. And I put in my notice and I was getting ready. It was like a couple weeks before I was about to leave. I was going to go on this trip and I was going to leave and I was going to come back and I was going to finish my shifts and be done in April. And that did not happen. I had the bad exit from home where I was had an inconvenient conversation with one of the administrators at the particular office, and that led to almost an immediate dismissal that day because they were like, well, since you've already put in your notice, why don't you just make today your last day? And I was like, oh shit, we got to that point already? Wow, you did not want to communicate and talk about this at all. You didn't want to hear what I had to say. Fine, heard. It was rough, but it was definitely an experience of being kicked out of the nest and then thrust onto the journey that I went on. And ironically enough, I went on a trip that weekend on a 10-day tour from Castle Rock, Washington State to San Diego, and literally went on a journey and then came back and began the next phase of life, which was turning myself into a career artist. And here I am now, 5 years later, putting in a notice, about to go on a big trip, headed to Japan in 2 days. And I was, a little bit hesitant and worried about, was history going to repeat itself and I was going to have like some incident occur. But no, it wasn't the case, because the office that I was at respected and valued me, and that shit made all the difference. So I was able to have the other send off as I'm preparing for the journey, to have the ritual farewell, the acknowledgments, the smiles, as opposed to sneaking out of the office in the dark with tears in my face. And I think about when we look at the journey that's ahead of us, we don't really know what's there. I have my destination. My destination is ideally some university in the Netherlands or London, Europe. I gotta go. I know that there's a lot of different feelings about it, but I gotta go to Europe. I gotta get my education there. I gotta get this next chapter of life. So that is the destination to where I'm headed. That is my end result. What I don't know is the exact steps that I'm gonna take to get to that point. I do have a general idea of what it will consist of, but I could not like pinpoint and say, oh yeah, at this date, this is what will happen. And that's not the way I want to experience the journey. Oh, we got something in the water. Oh, a little frog. A little frog. That's not the way I want to do it. I want to let this journey define itself as I define myself along it. And I wonder if that is something that's intrinsic to the journeying process in modern times. Because again, it was almost natural to just traverse great distances for anything. And now, like, traversing great distances is like, oh, I just do that for work. No big deal. Like, we don't maybe see that every trip that we take out of the house is its own journey because we're constantly leaving a house. But what if we were just on a trek from place to place to place? How would that, affect our mindset? And the last thing I think I can say to wrap this up is, like I mentioned, I'm going to Japan in a couple of days, and which will mean you will be getting wandering talks from Japan. Totally cool. But as I'm preparing my bags and I'm getting ready to start the packing process, I always reflect on a quote that my cousin told me. And this cousin basically was a caregiver for me when I was a child, helped raise me alongside my family, but was just like an instrumental babysitter in multiple ways and forms. Passed away in 2017 due to heart complications. And I remember that we used to have we had a couple of really long talks, a few when she was staying in the hospital, and I recorded them. And one of the things that my cousin told me is, you need to learn how to live out of a backpack. And it blew my mind. Learning how to live out of a backpack. When you do something like that, it really teaches you what is essential to your experience of this planet. What is required for my absolute mental, physical, emotional survival. When you have no choice but to keep everything that you're using on your back or on your side, you become extremely mindful of what you're packing. Shout out to Death Stranding, still playing it. It's literally a game about living out of a backpack. And it's just so amazing. I'm bringing my bag. I think about that quote, to live outside of a backpack. And I feel like that might be one of the most Homo sapien things we could do, to take it back to those pre-civilization days where all we had was what we came with, and that was it, and each other. in today's world where everything wants to be done conveniently, and there's commodifications and artificial intelligence and smart technology, we just need to remember the importance of the journey, the steps, and what it means to traverse through life.